2008 with Derek Rivera, 7000 Northwest 41st Street, Miami, Florida, 33166, named Jarius, at the bottom in Fort Myers. Then I'm going to start with what's marked as page 1. I'm going to show it for a second, and then I'll go ahead and read it to the jury. Check this out, cuz a murder case is the hardest cases to convict somebody on. Now, they ain't got no evidence on me whatsoever. All they got is the statements. Now, with that, it's going to be up to my lawyer. Judge, it would be easier if I read it from the podium, and then I can just kind of show it to the judge. Now with that, it's going to be up to my lawyer to cross-examine them and make them confused, and that should be easy because none of the statements don't make no sense, and all of them are different. Now, since they picked up Tim, Ariel's statement is the only one that's going to hurt the worst because she's saying she's seen all of us together that night. So all I need for you and CJ to do is get Ariel to say the story I want her to say, and the prosecutor won't have no case against me. Tell CJ I don't trust Jason or Tim, so don't even try to talk to them, but still send Charles the story. Oh, and tell him not to say nothing to Venja about me, period. Cuz y'all just handle Ariel ASAP, and I'll be straight cuz I already have an alibi. When y'all handle Ariel, just tell CJ to give her the story and y'all explain to her what she need to do. I'm going to flip the page over. Let's mark page 2. Just show it to the jury for a second. See down to the bottom. Just in case you tell the police, so let me do that sentence a little bit better. Tell her what she need to do, just in case she tell the police, but make sure y'all let her know if she don't go with this, she'll be fucking on your people and you're going to fuck hers. That the police going to try to scare her, but in reality they can't do nothing as long as she give them a story and say it's to the best of her knowledge. When she called them to change her statement to say that she was just going with the rumors because she was scared, don't say no names while y'all doing it, and make sure there ain't no fingerprints on the story. Tell CJ to get rid of all of them letters except for Ariel, Charles, and Brittany, but put Tim's up somewhere because I can see if he turns state first. Other than Ariel's statement, I'm good because I got the facts and proof that all the other ones aren't true, and with no evidence it's going to be 100 reasonable doubt, and all I need is one. You know, Venja telling everything, so the police might come and ask you questions. I know you already know to say that you don't remember. They do. Then on the left-hand corner, it says, get rid of, I can't make out the word, to when he give them the copy. So I'll just show them what's written on the side. And there's a section here that they can look at themselves when they get the opportunity.
It's big.
So it's big, but it is what it is. So I'll let them see that for a second. Then we go on and let me show them this letter, the next page. So this is the top. This starts with, buddy, we got to get close to her. Rather, it starts with, buddy, I, buddy, you know what you can do for me. And then it goes down to the bottom. So let's take a moment and read that. It says, I, buddy, you know what you can do for me to help me out? Talk to Ariel and make her think you were friends. I'm talking about good friends, because she do talk a lot. Go places with her and stuff. You're going to have to play this smooth, Doc. And you can't tell nobody. If somebody asks you why you're friends with her, tell them 'cause y'all cool or something like that. Now let me get to the reason for this. Something is going to happen to her, and I want to see if she tell people or not. Trust me. You'll know if she tell you what I'm talking about. Then I want you to start asking her questions after you get in there good with her. Like, why was her name in the paper? And see what she say. You don't have to tell me what she say, because I already know everything she said. Then she might ask you for advice as to what she should do when something happened to her. And I want you to say if it was you, you'll go alone with the letter. Alone or along. The jury can take a look at that. If she asks you about me, tell her we friends, but you ain't heard from me in like a month or two. Then it goes on to the next side and it says, buddy, you got to get close to her, but you have to watch her too, because you know she steal anything, and there's a smiley face next to it. Then it says, want to say something about her over the phone, say Gina. That's going to be her name. When we talk on the phone, and don't really write me nothing about her, but if you do, remember they read my letters and use, and there's a word here that I'm going to point out. Here, I don't know if this says, the jury can make their own conclusion about what that word is when they see it and read it. But it didn't say, don't write nothing about her, but if you do, remember they read my letters and use, and there's a word that looks like B-E-N-A on them too, and use codes. I'll understand what you'll be trying to say. I got to tell you about my white boy from Port Charlotte when I write you back. Well, I'm holla at you about a lot more stuff when I write back. You know I'll be calling on the meantime too. So, you know I'll be calling in the meantime too. And I love you, buddy. Oh yeah. You can tell like Darielle and Mariska people that you close with. Well, don't tell exactly why you friends with her. Just tell them you handling something for your buddy. So they're going to have to deal with it for a minute. Then there's another smiley face. So let's take a look at that. It says, oh yeah, you can tell like Darielle and Marquisha people that you close with. Well, don't tell exactly why you're friends with her. Just tell them you're handling something for your buddy. So they're going to have to deal with it for a minute, from min, M-I-N, and be like it's business, nothing personal. And then there's another design. That's a face with a design underneath of the nose that the jury can see. Read this a couple of times and burn this letter. Like that one about this subject.
People's Officer Aaron Olson.
Judge will stand in front of the court and raise your right hand. He'll swear you in, and then keep the microphone alongside the judge.
Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, so see you, sir. You can unlock the phone and be ready, Mr. Ramos, you may proceed.
Good afternoon. Could you state your name to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Sergeant Aaron Olson.
How are you employed?
I'm a sergeant with the Fort Myers Police Department.
How were you employed back on November 29th and 30th of the year 2007?
I was an officer with the Special Investigative Group during 2007.
At that time, did you become involved in the investigation of the homicide of an individual named Sean Taylor?
Yes, sir. The night before November 30th, my supervisor told me to meet at the FDLE building on the morning of November 30th.
Did you respond to the FDLE building on the morning of November 30th?
Yes, sir.
Were there detectives from the Miami-Dade Police Department there?
Yes, sir.
Who else was present?
There was FDLE agents, Miami-Dade detectives, and 3 Fort Myers officers.
Was there a briefing or a discussion of some sort?
Yes, there was a briefing.
After that briefing had concluded, did you head out in an effort to locate certain individuals?
Yes, sir.
What was your objective in heading out?
We were told to locate these individuals and see if they would come to the FDLE office voluntarily.
Were you going out with the objective of arresting anyone?
No, sir.
Were you going out to take anybody at all into custody?
No, no, sir.
Sustain that meeting.
When you headed out, were you able to locate any of the individuals?
Yes, sir.
How did that come about?
During a traffic stop.
What was the vehicle that was the subject of the traffic stop?
A blue minivan.
Were you riding alone or with someone?
I had my partner. She was driving. I was a passenger in the marked police vehicle.
Were you both in uniform or plain clothes?
Yes, sir. We were both in uniform.
Did you say that it was a marked police vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Were you the vehicle that actually stopped the car in question?
No, there was another police vehicle in front of us, operated by Sergeant Gonzalez. He's the one that stopped the vehicle. We were behind his vehicle.
Who is Sergeant Gonzalez?
He's a sergeant with the Fort Myers Police Department.
Was he riding alone in that vehicle?
He had an FDLE agent with him.
Was that a marked police vehicle?
That was.
Where was Sergeant Gonzalez's vehicle in relation to the vehicle that was stopped?
It was a standard distance away from the blue minivan, just like you would see in any traffic stop, 10 to 15 feet behind it, and my vehicle was 10 to 15 feet behind his vehicle.
At any point in time, did you pull your vehicle in front of the vehicle that they were trying to conduct the traffic stop on?
No, sir.
Where did you park?
Directly behind Sergeant Gonzalez's vehicle.
Were there any other police vehicles that arrived on the scene?
No other police vehicles.
Okay. Were there any other vehicles at all that arrived on the scene?
I believe there was 2 unmarked FDLE vehicles somewhere in the area, but I'm not sure where they parked. I can't remember where they were. Somewhere behind us, I believe, but just our 2 marked vehicles were only the marked vehicles.
Did you get out of your vehicle?
I did.
What did you do?
I approached the passenger side on the right side. I was the passenger in my marked vehicle, so I approached the passenger side of the blue van.
As you approached the passenger side of the van, did you have your weapon drawn at all?
No.
Did any of the officers there, as far as you could see, have any weapons drawn?
At no time during that day did we have our weapons drawn.
Were they holstered?
Yes, sir.
When you approached the passenger side of the vehicle, did you recognize anyone inside?
I recognized Mr. Rivera and Mr. Wardlow. Mr. Rivera was the right front passenger, and Mr. Wardlow was in the back left of the vehicle.
The individual that you described as Mr. Rivera, do you see that person in the courtroom today?
He's the gentleman in the blue collared shirt with the button down.
For the record indicating the defendant. What did you say, if anything, when you approached the passenger door?
I introduced myself, and then we started talking about football. I knew he played football. I played football, so it was something in common, and we just talked while the detectives were speaking with the driver.
Who was on the other side of the vehicle, on the driver's side?
Well, I believe it was my partner, Officer Candace Derrick, at the time, now Officer Patashio.
Were you involved in any conversations with the driver of the vehicle at that point?
No time.
Do you know if they were asking the driver of the vehicle for his ID or any other documentation?
I do not know I don't know what their conversation was. I was on the passenger side, speaking with Mr. Rivera, so I did not hear.
At some point in time, did you ask Mr. Rivera whether he wanted to step out of the vehicle or not?
At some point in the traffic stop, Detective or Agent Walsh asked me to have him step out. So I asked Mr. Rivera if he could step out of the vehicle to the rear of the vehicle to speak to Agent Walsh, and he said he would.
Did he step out of the vehicle?
Yes.
Did you touch him at all at any point in time when he stepped out?
No, sir.
Did he ever indicate to you at that point that he wanted you to call his parents or anything like that?
No, sir.
Where did he go?
To the rear of the vehicle with Agent Walsh.
Did he speak to Agent Walsh?
Yes, sir.
What happened with the other occupants of the vehicle?
I stayed on the right side of the vehicle with them while they spoke with Mr. Rivera. And at some point, they asked Mr. Wardlow to step out, which he did voluntarily. And then the fourth person, who I don't recall his name, they asked him to step out and speak to him as well.
Did you ever see Mr. Rivera being patted down at all? Were you able to observe that?
I did not see.
And did you hear any of the conversation that took place between Agent Walsh and Mr. Rivera?
I did not hear any of the conversations.
Did you ever see anyone place any handcuffs on Mr. Rivera?
No, no handcuffs.
Did he get into a police vehicle?
Yes.
Whose vehicle did he get into?
I believe he was in Sergeant Gonzalez's vehicle.
Would that be Sergeant Art Gonzalez,
Sergeant Art Gonzalez.
the one you mentioned earlier?
Yes.
What did you do at that point?
I stayed at the right side of the vehicle during that entire traffic stop.
Once all the individuals were outside of the vehicle, did there come a point in time when you drove that vehicle?
After all four occupants were out and Agent Walsh spoke with them, he asked me, and I believe it was him, asked me to drive the van back to the FDLE headquarters,
And did you do that?
which I did.
Did you transport any of the people that were inside the vehicle?
No, sir.
What happened when you got back to FDLE headquarters?
Once I arrived back to FDLE, an agent, I'm not sure who, took possession of the van, and then I went back inside of the common area of the FDLE building.
Did you have any further interaction with Mr. Rivera?
No, sir.
Did you have any further interaction with any of the other individuals that were in the vehicle?
No, sir.
You mentioned that you saw Charles Wardlow in the vehicle. How did you recognize him?
I knew him as well just from prior contacts. I didn't know him well. I didn't know him personally. I just knew who he was.
One moment. Did you ever see anyone at all take anything from Mr. Rivera's possession?
No, sir.
Did anyone take a cell phone from him at all?
I did not see anyone take a cell phone.
No further questions.
Just the legal side.
One more question, Mr. Olson. Did you ever at any point in time see anyone take anybody's cell phone at that scene?
I did not personally see that, no.
The legal side.
Good afternoon, Sergeant Olson.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Now, I want to start by asking about well, let me go back a little bit. Back in 2007, were you a sergeant at that time?
No, ma'am, I was an officer.
Okay. And as an officer, you were wearing a standard issued Fort Myers police uniform, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you describe for the jury what that uniform looked like?
It's a dark blue uniform with a light blue stripe on the leg with a badge on my left chest, two Fort Myers police patches on my shoulders, and a duty belt on my waist.
Okay. And the duty belt for the waist, just so they can understand, it would have a gun on one side and a taser on the other side. Is that correct?
I didn't have a taser at the time.
Okay. But you did have a gun, correct?
I did on my right side.
And did you also have the baton on the back, the smaller baton?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you had handcuffs?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I want to talk about everyone who was present that day. It was yourself, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was driving the unit that you were in?
Officer Candace Patashio.
Okay. And Officer Potasio was also in uniform, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Same uniform.
And she was an officer from Fort Myers Police.
Yes, ma'am.
And you were in a marked patrol car, correct?
Correct.
And just so the jury can understand, what do the Fort Myers Police marked patrol cars look like?
At that time, they were white with blue horizontal stripe down the side. Now they're black and white. They look different now.
And it had the overhead lights?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Were the overhead lights activated?
During the initial traffic stop, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So your lights were on and Sergeant Gonzalez's lights were on too, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. In order to conduct the traffic stop, we had to activate our lights so they knew that we were going to initiate the traffic stop.
Okay. So let me go back to who all was present. It was yourself, Officer Potasio, Officer Derrick, and Officer Gonzalez from Fort Myers.
Officer Derrick is now Officer Patashio. She was married, so that is
Okay.
one and the same.
I apologize then. So Officer Potasio, Officer Gonzalez, and yourself from Fort Myers Police,
That's
correct?
3 plus Agent Walsh at the time, no, not who was with FDLE and now was a detective for my department. So there's 4 of us.
Okay.
3 in uniform, 1 in plain clothes.
And Officer Walsh was riding with Officer Gonzalez, correct?
Correct.
And you also stated that there were undercover officers who were there in unmarked cars.
There were 2 vehicles that I remember being out with us that day. I don't remember where they parked at that time.
And how many people were in those vehicles?
I cannot recall.
Okay. Do you know if there were also other officers who were nearby monitoring the scene?
Not that I know of. I'm not sure.
And is it fair to say that this wasn't a Fort Myers police operation?
It was not. We were there just for assistance.
So you wouldn't have necessarily known what officers from another agency were doing?
Correct.
And your role was to try to find the individuals and bring them in for questioning, correct?
Correct.
Now, as part of this, there was a debriefing or some type of meeting the day before, correct?
I was not involved in anything the day before, just the morning of November 30th.
Okay. Are you aware if there was a debriefing the day before?
I'm not aware.
Okay. And if the subjects agreed to come voluntarily to give a statement, where were they supposed to be taken?
So the FDLE headquarters in Fort Myers.
Now, just so the jury can understand, where was the FDLE headquarters?
It's on the south side of Fort Myers.
Now, where is, or what would have been the closest Fort Myers police substation in relation to the scene of the traffic stop?
City of Fort Myers Police?
Yes.
That'd be our headquarters in downtown Fort Myers, would have been the closest.
And how far is the Fort Myers Police downtown headquarters from the jail?
The jail?
Yes.
The Lee County Jail?
Yes.
It's across the street.
Okay. So both Fort Myers Police headquarters and the jail are in close proximity, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you know where the closest Lee County Sheriff's Department substation would have been?
Substation,
Yes.
maybe 2 miles away to the south.
And do you know where the Lee County Sheriff's Department headquarters was in relation to the scene of the traffic stop?
Maybe 7, 8, maybe 10 miles to the south.
And how far were you from the scene of the traffic stop to the FDLE headquarters?
I'd have to say maybe 7 or 8 miles to the south.
So, you stated that you knew Mr. Rivera played football, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that when you approached the vehicle and spoke with him, you were talking to him about football, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
At that point, the driver was already out of the vehicle, correct?
I believe so. Yes,
And
ma'am.
isn't it true the driver was taken out of the vehicle first?
Yes, he was. The Agent Walsh spoke to him in the rear of the van first.
Now, you weren't able to hear what was being said to the driver, correct?
No, no, ma'am.
And you were concerned with Mr. Rivera primarily.
Anyone in the vehicle, I just happened to be on the right side of the vehicle next to him.
And where was Officer Potasio as you were speaking with Mr.
I
Rivera?
believe she was on the driver's side.
Was anyone at the rear driver's side, the rear passenger side of the car?
No, I was the only one on the passenger side.
At any point, do you recall Mr. Rivera pulling out his cell phone, while you were watching him as he was still in the car?
He may have. I can't recall if he had a cell phone with him on him or spoke on his cell phone.
And it's your testimony, you were the person who asked Mr. Rivera to get out of the car, correct?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
When he got out of the car, though, you did not pat him down, correct?
At no time did I pat him down.
At any point, did you take Mr. Rivera's cell phone from him?
No.
So, he may have had his cell phone when he was in the car, but it's your testimony you never took it from him.
Correct. I don't recall even seeing a cell phone. It was so long ago.
If you had taken his cell phone, what would you have done with it?
I can't answer that. I'd have no idea. I mean, I can't really answer what I would have done 7 years ago, 6 years ago.
Now, once Mr. Rivera was out of the patrol car, was out of the van that he was in, he was immediately taken towards the back and he spoke with Agent Walsh. Is that correct?
Correct.
And it's your testimony that Mr. Rivera agreed to go for questioning, correct?
Voluntarily, yes, ma'am.
Now, did you speak with any of the other occupants of the vehicle?
While they were speaking with Mr. Rivera in the rear of the vehicle, then I just made small talk with Mr. Warlow and the rear passenger, who I don't remember his name.
Okay. Do you know if everyone in the vehicle had a driver's license?
I do not know.
But you were the one who drove the van away from the scene.
Yes, ma'am.
So none of the occupants were asked to simply stay in the van but follow you to FDLE.
The reason I drove the van is I was asked to, and why I did, I don't know at the time. I was an officer. I was told to drive the van, so I drove the van.
Okay.
I'm not sure how it got to that point.
Well, let me ask the question again. You yourself never asked the occupants, including Mr. Rivera, to stay inside the van and to follow you to FDLE.
Correct, I did not.
Do you know if any of the other officers asked them to stay in the van but follow you to FDLE?
I'm not sure because I was not part of their conversation.
Okay. But at some point, all the occupants were taken out of the van, correct?
Correct.
There were none of the original passengers still in the van when you drove it to FDLE.
No, ma'am.
They didn't have the keys. You had the keys to it, correct?
Correct.
And they all went together, correct?
They were all driven in separate vehicles, I believe.
But they all were in the van together.
Oh, yes, ma'am. During the initial traffic stop, yes.
And the FDLE headquarters, you stated, was approximately 7 or 8 miles from where the traffic stop occurred.
Roughly, that's what I believe it is.
And you're not certain of where the 2 unmarked vehicles positioned themselves in relation to the van.
Correct. I do not recall where they were at all.
Did you ever speak to Mr. Rivera as to why he was being brought in for questioning?
No, he was very upbeat about football. He talked about how good of a football player he was, that he wanted to continue playing football, and that was just what we spoke of was football.
And isn't it true that this traffic stop took place on a Friday morning?
November 30th. I don't recall what day that was.
Do you recall if school was in session that day?
I don't recall.
Do you recall if you were ever asked to go to Mr. Rivera's school to speak with him there?
I don't recall if I was.
Do you recall if you were ever asked to contact Mr. Rivera's parents?
No, I don't recall.
Is that no, you don't recall?
No, I don't recall being asked that.
Judge, if I could have just one moment.
Yes.
Now, where were you before the traffic stop occurred?
Prior to the traffic stop, I believe just Officer Patash and I were driving through the city looking for Mr. Rivera and his other friends.
Okay. And did you have a definite destination as you were driving around, or were you simply driving and hoping that you would see him walking somewhere?
Just driving and looking for him.
Okay. So you weren't headed to his school, correct?
Not that I recall, no.
You weren't headed to his house, correct?
No, ma'am.
And you weren't headed to a place of employment for either of his parents?
No, ma'am.
And how did you know that Mr. Rivera was in the car?
I believe it was the FDLE agents that located him in the van and asked us to stop the vehicle.
Were you provided with a photo of what Mr. Rivera looked like?
Yes.
And that would have been his driver's license photo?
I don't remember what photo it was.
Okay, but you did have a photo to look at.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, as an officer, if he was in the driver's license database, which we commonly refer to as David, you would be able to pull up his address, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you would also then be able to cross-reference that with school records?
Correct.
Do you recall if you ever specifically were told to go to the school and look for him?
I don't recall if we were.
Do you know who the other passengers were in the van?
I do recall who the driver was. I did not know him. I did not know the right rear passenger. I just knew Mr. Rivera and Mr. Wardlow. Mr. Wardlow was in the left rear side of the passenger van.
So as far as you knew, the 2 other occupants of the van were not suspects, correct?
I'm not sure if they were at this time. I just can't recall who they were.
And did you have any directives on what was supposed to be done with those 2 passengers?
No, ma'am.
But they were placed in patrol cars, correct?
Voluntarily, yes.
And they were brought back to FDLE as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you frisk or pat down any of the 2 passengers who were not Mr. Rivera or Mr. Wardlow?
No, I did not.
Why was the van taken to FDLE headquarters?
I can't answer that. I was just told to drive it there, so that's what I did. As an officer, I was given a directive, and I followed through with that.
Were you ever asked to search the van?
No.
You just drove the van to FDLE.
Correct. And once I arrived at FDLE, an agent took custody of it, and then that's all I did with the van.
Now, once the agent took custody of the van, by that you mean you gave the agent the keys to the van?
Correct.
So they were not given to Mr. Rivera or any of the other passengers?
I did not see Mr. Rivera or the other passengers after that, so I was not able to give them the keys.
Nothing further at this time.
Rivera?
You mentioned on cross that you had one of those smaller police batons on your person at the time, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever take out that baton to use it?
I didn't take out my baton, my weapon, or any other utility that I carried that day during any point.
Did you ever witness any of the officers there take out any kind of a police baton?
No, none at all.
You mentioned also that you had handcuffs on you, as counsel said. Did you ever take those handcuffs out at all to use them?
No, not at all.
Did you ever witness any of the officers there use their handcuffs?
None.
You spoke a little bit about the proximity of the stop to where the local jail is located. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
At that point in time, had you arrested anyone?
No, no one was detained or arrested.
To your knowledge, did any of the officers that were present ever take anyone into custody or arrest them at this stop?
No, sir.
What exactly did you say to Mr. Rivera when you asked him to step out of the
Just advised him that Detective Walsh, or Agent Walsh at the time, wanted to speak with him at the rear vehicle and asked him if he would step out and speak with him, which he said he would.
What if the defendant had said no?
Sustained.
Was it your objective or intention to arrest or take any of these people into custody during that stop?
No, not at all.
Was it the objective of any of the other officers present to take?
Rephrase your question.
Based on the briefing that you had attended earlier, was the objective of all of you that were looking to locate these individuals to take anyone into custody?
No, sir. During the briefing, it was made very clear to us that this
Overall.
it was made very clear to us that this was voluntary only. There was no custodial arrest. It was only on their own accord if they would come down to FDLE headquarters to speak with the detectives.
No. That's all right.
Maybe excuse, like Sergeant, maybe excuse.
Thank you, sir.
Big minus,
Staples, Mike Walsh.
oh, we don't need to swear him in again, do we? Same one we had sworn, right? You're still under oath. Detective, have a seat. When you're ready, Mr. Rao, you can proceed.
Welcome back, Detective.
Thank you.
Where are you presently employed again?
City of Fort Myers Police Department.
I want to take you back to November 29th and 30th of 2007. Who were you employed with back then?
Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
And what was your assignment with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
As a special agent.
Do you recall attending a briefing at that time at FDLE with members of the Miami-Dade Police Department?
I do.
Homicide Bureau?
I do.
Who else was present?
Agents from Miami-Dade Police, FDLE agents, and members from the Fort Myers Police Department.
As a result of that briefing or that meeting, did you head out at some point to try and locate certain individuals?
Yes, we did.
What was your objective in locating these individuals?
To try to locate these individuals, and if we're able to locate them, see if they would voluntarily come back to FDLE.
What, if any, of the individuals that you encountered said no?
None.
No. What
sorry.
if any of the individuals that you encountered said to you no, they were not going to come back?
Oh, then they were not going to come back. We weren't going to force them to. It's strictly voluntary.
Were you going to arrest anyone?
No.
Were you going to take anyone into custody?
No.
Did there come a point in time when any of these individuals was located?
Yes.
How did that come about?
That day I was riding in a City of Fort Myers police car with Officer Gonzalez, and we conducted a traffic stop on a blue minivan.
Would that be Sergeant Art Gonzalez?
Yes.
Was he with the Fort Myers Police Department at the time?
Yes, he was.
And did you say this was a marked police vehicle?
Yes, it was.
Were you the vehicle that actually conducted the traffic stop?
Yes.
How did Sergeant Gonzalez stop the car?
With his overhead lights?
Did the car stop?
Yes, it did.
Were there other police cars present there at the time?
At the time we stopped the car?
Yes.
No.
Shortly after you stopped the car, did other police vehicles or other agency vehicles arrive at the scene?
Yes.
Which ones?
Officer Olson, and I think he was riding with Officer Derrick, in a marked Fort Myers police car, and then 2 FDLE agents in unmarked cars.
Where were these other vehicles in relation to the vehicle that had been stopped, if you recall?
Oh, directly behind us.
Excuse me?
Behind us.
Okay. Were there any of the vehicles, either FDLE or Fort Myers, that pulled in front of the car that was going to be stopped?
No. No.
Did everyone just park and line up behind the vehicles?
Yes.
Their line?
Yes.
What happened once the vehicle stopped?
Vehicle stopped. Officer Gonzalez got out of the driver's side. I got out of the passenger side, and we approached the blue minivan.
Which side of the van did Officer Gonzalez approach?
He went to the driver's side.
Did he engage in any conversation with the driver?
He did. Yes.
Were you able to hear that conversation?
Yes. He asked the driver. Yes.
Sorry, you don't have to tell us what he said.
Yes.
Was there anyone that approached on the other side of the vehicle?
I did.
And where did you go?
The front passenger side.
Do you recall whether Officer Aaron Olson was also present at the scene?
Yes. He came immediately after us.
What did you do when you approached the vehicle?
What did I do?
Yes.
I approached the front passenger side, and I looked in the vehicle, and I saw that it was occupied by 4 people.
Did you recognize any of the people inside?
I did.
Who did you recognize?
The defendant, Eric Rivera, was the front seat passenger, and behind the driver was another individual that we were looking for.
And what was his name?
Wardlow, Charles Wardlow.
The person that you mentioned is Eric Rivera. Do you see that person in the courtroom today?
I do, yes.
Could you please point him out and describe an article of clothing he's wearing?
Sitting at the defendant's table wearing a blue button-down shirt.
For the record, it was the defendant. Let me ask you, Detective, at the point in time that you got out and you were approaching the vehicle that had been stopped, did you have any weapons on you at the time?
I had, yes, on my hip.
Okay. Did you at any time unholster your firearm and
No.
brandish it?
No.
As far as you were able to see, did any of the officers that approached the vehicle ever have any weapons drawn?
No.
Did they have any batons drawn?
No.
Did they have any handcuffs in their hands as they were walking towards that car?
No.
At some point in time, did the occupants of the vehicle step out?
Yes.
How did that come about?
After we saw that it was Mr. Rivera and Mr. Wardlow in the car, I retreated from the car, Sergeant Gonzalez and I. We went back to the rear of our marked city police car. And I said, "Hey, Art," this is Sergeant Gonzalez. I said, "That's Eric in the front passenger seat." And he said, "Yes, it is." And I said, "Okay." I just wanted to make...
What did you decide to do at that point?
I said, let's ask the occupants to, if they were voluntarily...
Objection sustained.
What did you decide to do at that point?
ask each occupant one at a time if they voluntarily come back to FDLE.
And did you proceed to do that?
Yes,
Did you witness when Eric Rivera stepped out of the vehicle?
I did.
Did any officer ever grab him and pull him out of that vehicle?
No,
Did anyone ever touch him as he exited the vehicle?
no,
Did he approach you when he exited the vehicle?
yes.
Where were you standing?
At the rear of our marked police car.
What did you say to the defendant?
I said, Eric, there's some guys that would like to talk to you. Will you voluntarily come back to FDLE?
Did you tell him who those guys were?
No.
What did he tell you?
He said, sure, no problem.
At any point in time, did he ask you to call his parents?
No.
At any point in time, did he ask you to call anyone?
No.
Did he ask you what this was about?
No.
Did you witness the defendant ever being patted down?
Yes.
Who patted him down?
Sergeant Gonzalez.
And how was that done?
I just pat him down on the outside of his clothing.
Did you see Sergeant Gonzalez take anything at all from the defendant?
No.
Did you see him ever take any cell phone from the defendant?
No.
In fact, did you ever see either yourself or any of the other officers that were present take anything from any of the individuals that were in that car?
No.
Where did Eric Rivera go after he agreed to go back with you?
He went into Sergeant Gonzalez's patrol vehicle.
And who was driving the vehicle?
Sergeant Gonzalez.
Did you get back into that same car, which is the one you had arrived in?
I did not, no.
Where did you go?
Another agent that rode back with Frank Rubino, who worked for FDLE at the time.
Now, at some point, had all of the occupants of the vehicle exited?
Yes.
Okay, and everyone was going to go back to the FDLE headquarters?
Yes.
Who drove the van back to FDLE headquarters?
Officer Olson.
Were there any other agents from FDLE present at that scene besides yourself?
Yes.
Would one of them have been Frank Rubino, who you just mentioned?
Yes.
Aside from Frank Rubino, who else would have been there?
I think it was Special Agent Grant Wagner and maybe Special Agent Greg Monk.
Were they riding in marked police vehicles?
No, unmarked.
And again, were these vehicles parked in front of, or had they cut off the car that was going to be stopped?
No.
Why was the defendant taken back to FDLE headquarters?
Why?
Was that the agreed upon location where everyone was going to meet?
Yes.
Was there ever a discussion, to your knowledge, of taking any individuals to other locations other than FDLE?
No.
Did you, at any point in time, or any of the other officers that were with you, take anyone into custody at the scene of that traffic stop?
No.
One moment. Officer, were you still employed with FDLE several months later when you went to go pick up the letter from that came from Jairus Price?
It was, yes.
Nothing further.
Were you in plain clothes the day of the traffic stop?
Yes.
Why did you have a gun on your hip?
Because I was riding in a marked police vehicle.
There's a rule that says you have to have a gun when you ride in somebody else's police vehicle.
No, I had my tactical vest and a gun.
Okay, so you were wearing body armor and a weapon for a friendly encounter that was voluntary.
Right.
Okay. Where were you right before this traffic stop occurred?
Where were we?
Yeah, where were you actually physically before the traffic stop was initiated?
We were sitting on surveillance.
And the surveillance was on Mr. Rivera's home, right?
Yeah, we weren't there, but there was an agent there, yes.
Okay. The operational plan was to watch Mr. Rivera's home and wait for Mr. Rivera, his friend Mr. Wardlow, and his cousins to be driving to school and then stop the vehicle on the way to school, right?
That wasn't the plan, no?
Okay. Well, you knew where Mr. Rivera's home was, right?
Right.
So you could have gone to Mr. Rivera's home, knocked on the door, and say, "We'd like to speak with your son Eric," right?
I don't know if anyone did that.
Well, I'm just asking if that was possible.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, I know it's a common sense answer, but I have to ask.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, on the other end, a few minutes away, the school, right?
I don't know what school he went to.
Are you familiar with the Christian Academy in Fort Myers High
No.
School?
Where's that?
Okay. All right. You are a law enforcement officer in Fort Myers, right?
Yes.
I just wanted to check.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So somebody could have figured out where you went to school, being as you had a whole bunch of cops involved and databases to work with, right?
Sure.
Okay. So you could have talked to him at his house here or at the school, right? Those are possibilities, right?
Sure.
But the operational plan was to stop him in a vehicle when there were no adults around, right?
No.
Okay. But it wasn't an accident that the vehicle was encountered by the Fort Myers Police unit, the MARC unit. An FDLE undercover saw the vehicle leaving the home, radioed that information in, and at your direction, the Fort Myers MARC unit pulled over the vehicle Mr. Rivera was in, right?
We stopped the car, yes.
The FMPD stopped him based on your direction, right, sir?
No.
Who directed FMPD to
The
stop?
Miami detectives.
Okay, based on information supplied to them by FDLE agents.
Right.
So the FDLE agents did the surveillance on the homes of the boys, and the Miami officers, who have no jurisdiction in the county, right? Is that correct?
Right.
Would then give the instruction to the local FMPD guys to make the actual traffic stop. That would be the operational plan?
That's what happened.
Okay, it wasn't just random luck that all of 4 of these boys were taken into the FDLE station at approximately the same time. There was an operational plan to pull them over at the same time, right?
We didn't know who would be with who.
Okay, but you were conducting surveillance. It wasn't just be on the lookout. If you happen to see this vehicle, pull it over.
We didn't know if he would be in a vehicle or anything. It's
Okay.
just the way it worked out.
Well, let's back up. Didn't you just state earlier you knew where he lived, right?
Right. Yes.
And surveillance, what was the idea behind the surveillance of the home?
In case he showed up at the home.
Okay, or left the home.
Or left the home,
And
right.
in this case, he left the home.
He showed up in a van, went inside the house, came out a couple minutes later, and then left.
Okay, and that's when the traffic stop was made.
Correct.
And was it around the same time that, okay, it was Mr. Wardlow and Mr. Rivera were in a vehicle together, right? The stop you were involved in.
Right.
And then there was also another traffic stop done in Fort Myers that day involving Mr. Hunt and Mr. Mitchell, or was that 2 separate stops?
That was 2 separate.
And they were all brought in, is it fair to say, at roughly the same time to the FDLE headquarters?
At the same time, no.
I say same day, right?
Same day, yeah.
Same morning?
I think Hunt and Mitchell were hours later.
Okay. Why was the van taken down to the FDLE office?
We had to get back there.
You had to get back there?
No, the van had to get back.
Why?
We weren't just going to leave it there,
Why not?
just in case something happened to it.
Why not call the owner or one of the parents to come get it?
No.
Why not have it towed?
Towed?
Yeah.
No.
Is your testimony law enforcement agencies don't frequently have vehicles towed after traffic stops?
If there was an arrest, sure.
What other law enforcement agencies do?
Just plain.
I didn't say others, but include his, Judge. All right. So the van had to get out of there and it had to go to FDLE headquarters. That would seem the best way to do things, right?
Right.
Now, there were 2 suspects that Miami-Dade wanted to talk to from that van, Rivera and Wardlow, right?
Correct.
But there were 2 other guys in the van, right?
Right.
They were also taken to the FDLE.
Right.
Why weren't they just told, you guys take the van and go? We don't need to talk to you.
I don't know.
Had Miami-Dade indicated any interest in them?
Not to my knowledge.
Let's back up to your last answer, but I don't know. Who was in charge at the scene of that traffic stop?
In charge? Sergeant Gonzalez?
Okay. Who was, as far as in charge at an operational level?
I don't know.
Okay, because I know that we heard testimony from another witness earlier, and you corroborated that when the traffic stop occurred, Mr. Rivera was asked to get out and come back and talk to you, right?
Right.
Okay. Would you consider yourself to be operationally the person in charge at that moment in time of the traffic stop?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't think about it like that.
Let me ask it a different way. Who made the decision that the van had to be brought back to FDLE?
I think that was something, I don't know. I don't know that.
Okay. So 2 people that Miami-Dade had never mentioned their names and had no interest in were also brought back to FDLE.
Correct.
To your knowledge, did they stay there for hours along with Mr. Rivera, Mr. Wardlow, and the rest?
I have no idea.
You don't know what happened to them once they got there.
No.
Or was anybody in the car told, do you want to call somebody to come get you, like a parent?
I didn't say so.
You didn't say it. Did you hear it said by any of the other armed officers there?
No.
Okay. And you knew Mr. Rivera played football before the traffic stop as part of the 2 briefings you attended, right?
That he played football?
Yeah.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
I don't remember that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm confusing you with another officer who was playing football. So nobody ever discussed picking Mr. Rivera up or Mr. Wardlow at their school or at their homes?
No.
Nobody ever said if we pick them up at the school or the homes, a lawyer or a parent will get involved?
No.
Okay. You realize Mr. Rivera was a juvenile, right?
Yes.
Right. Now, getting to where you work now, FMPD. The FMPD main station downtown Fort Myers is about 2 miles from the traffic stop. Is that fair to say?
Thereabouts, sure.
Right. And the FMPD downtown office, would you agree, is a much larger facility than the FDLE headquarters in Fort Myers?
Much larger? I don't know.
You don't know. You
Roughly
worked
the
at
same
both
size?
of them for years?
FDLE, at that time, FDLE was a big commercial building, and they had parts on one side and parts on Suite 6 down the other.
Oh,
So a lot of square footage.
I'm familiar. All right, how about in terms of employees? You would definitely agree with me the FMPD had far more employees
Yes,
at the time. It's
yes.
today. All right, and the FMPD station was equipped with modern interview rooms with recording equipment.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained trial.
Judge, may we have a sidebar on this issue?
I'm sorry?
So the 4 young men in the car, in the van, were free to go at all times after the traffic stop was initiated, right?
Yes, sir.
But you're not free to not pull over when lights and sirens go on behind you, right?
About the traffic stop?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the citizen who has lights and sirens come on behind him has to pull over or they're breaking the law, right?
Correct.
They're not free to go. So at what point did it come from you're not free to go, you've just been pulled over by armed officers, to you're all free to go?
We asked them if they would come down to FDLE.
Okay, so at that point, in your mind, they were free to say no, right?
Right.
And it no longer was, you have to stay here, right?
Right.
They could have gotten back in the van, put the keys in, and driven away, right?
Drove away. Yes.
But nobody told them that, right?
Right.
Okay. Do you know, as a FMPD detective, if the FMPD has a policy regarding if there's a juvenile in custody and a parent calls, will they inform the parent the child's there?
Sustained. Next question.
You attended a couple of briefings regarding these stops. Did you see any either of these 2 gentlemen from this table at either of those briefings?
No.
Did you ever meet them back then during that time period?
No.
Okay. May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Just a couple more things, if I may. There were no traffic offenses committed by the driver of that van, right? The stop was to see if you could get Rivera and Wardlow to come to the FDLE, right?
To see if they were in the car.
To see if they were in the car, and then the next step was, can we get them to come down and answer questions?
Correct.
Okay. When you asked Mr. Rivera to come to the FDLE, you said, some guys would like to talk to you, would you like to come down?
Correct.
Okay, you didn't say you don't have to.
That's correct.
That's all I have, thank you.
All right, regret.
Officer, do you recall at what time approximately the stop occurred?
I think it was a little after 11 a.m. in the morning.
A little after 11 a.m. in the morning. At a little after 11 a.m. in the morning was the defendant...
Objection calls for speculation.
Finish the
Somebody
question.
raise the question, yeah.
At a little after 11 a.m. in the morning, was the defendant in school?
There you go.
Sustained. Next question.
Where was the defendant at a little after 11 a.m. in the morning?
Driving in the blue minivan.
Nothing further.
Well, I need to recross and the judge is new
All
area.
right, Mr. Walsh, you may be excused.
Let me ask one question, no follow-up on that.
Not on a recross. Thank you.
Thank you.
Judge, it's a new area that
Date, call you next witness. We have any more date? Sure, come on. Mr. Chair, why don't you step in the jury room for about 5 minutes? 3 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, step back to the jury room. You can leave or take your personal possessions and your tablets with you, as you see. And we'll get you out in the future. You all right? You can leave them on your seat or take them with you. It doesn't matter.
Well, Judge, the thing is that they all drove in one car.
They all drove in one car.
They're out of their hotel and expecting to go back. So I guess the bottom line is that if we could see if the juror could stay a little longer.
He can't. He's got time to appoint at 5 o'clock and we're told to get done 3:30.
If he can't, he can't, and we'll all make him available tomorrow.
Good. Bring him back.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, bring all your personal belongings with you, and you'll have 12 minutes and we're out. All rise for the jury, please.
Jurors, you don't need to sit down. The rest of y'all can sit down. Members of the jury, we are done for the day today with you. We've got some other matters I'm going to deal with after you all leave. Same rules apply tonight that applied every other night. Don't watch anything, don't read anything, don't listen to anything about the case. Don't discuss it amongst yourselves or with anybody else. Don't even discuss it in your presence. I'm going to ask you for upstairs tomorrow at 10 a.m. the night for 7. Still on 7, right?
Yes, Judge.
7 for jury room. We're going to get you down here as soon as we can after that. Continue on with the presentation of the evidence. We are still on track to our schedule, so thank you.
10 o'clock. 7th floor. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, please make sure you have all your personal belongings with you. I'll meet with you briefly outside and we'll get you underway. Tomorrow morning, 7th floor, 10 o'clock. Have a good evening. Okay, now go get your coffee.
begin our fifth estate discussion. We're going to take a 10-minute break because we've been at this for a few hours. You all just came here, so give us 10 and we'll be able to get started up on the mediation.